On the several occasions I've met Yvonne, I've always been fascinated by the anecdotes she's kind of shared with me about the archive at Brintons and how it really is a living resource that is used on a daily basis. This first slide, I think, really beautifully demonstrates how a good design will always be a good design.
The inspiration that the original designer did, Mr. Holden, in 1941, he probably looked at something 100 years earlier, because this is very typical of around the 1840s. So even then they were looking for inspiration. And then Mr. Mellor in 1947, he did his interpretation of it. And today, even 60, 70 years on, that design is still being used regularly. If you look at the red and the gold with the fleur-de-lis in the background, it's very classical. The green one, a bit more traditional. And then the yellow one on the end, which is really up-to-date and modern. So you can see just from one design the different looks you can get, and it's still being used now.
A lot of what you do is working with people to try and find historically accurate or things that are accurate to a period for a building. And obviously this is a huge London landmark, the St Pancras Hotel. And kind of Brintons has been linked with it in some ways, kind of throughout its history.
We could remake it from the original cloth. And also, because you can imagine 100 years later or so, the colours would have faded. So I couldn't find original design papers of that period so as they could match the navies and the colours. So historically we could get it back to how it would have looked at the time. And the other nice thing about this is yes, they have done the original staircase and the original carpet, but all the rooms and corridors are very modern.
I'm sure most of you have heard of Lucien and Robin Day, who are very influential mid-century designers. You actually worked with the Barbican,
the Barbican
for an exhibition, and you helped them to basically go through the archives, and they were original Robin Day designs that he had produced.
We had the original artwork that he did, and then from that we would have put it onto point paper. And the other nice thing, which they thought was nice, is we'd actually got carpet samples of this work as well.
What's really invaluable to you is that you have a physical archive. And some of these designs that are hundreds of years old, you can look at them.
I mean, when these designers started off, they used to paint it all out first as a picture, then show it to the head designers, and then whatever got chosen then got put onto point paper and then it got made. Well, all that goes into the archive, whereas today, if you're digitally doing it, the things that aren't made, are they wiped off? Who knows? But I mean, we keep that, so we've got the artwork with it as well.
What often strikes me is how vivid and kind of colourful the carpets were.
Yeah, I mean, yellow was quite an important dye around. The Prince Regents liked yellow, and they just perfected quite a bright yellow at that time.
Carpet was quite a precious thing as well, wasn't it? And
very
an expensive thing
a work
to
of
produce.
Art.
It was actually laid in strips, which might have been sewn together, or tacked down. It was you could only be a certain width.
Yes.
And now we've reached the other end of the spectrum where it's absolutely enormous. Yeah, but you do also work with quite contemporary designers on things. So like Timorous Beasties and Chris and Susan Argo have recently kind of been working in the past few years. Yeah. And particularly Timorous Beasties kind of actually take some of the quite traditional motifs and use them in a they changed the scale and the colouring, but actually quite true to the original form. These Katagami stencils that you have.
We've got the largest private collection in England.
So these designs on the left-hand side are actually
how we've used them.
Yeah, and available to buy.
Yes,
as well.
Those are all in those 4 there are just an example of what's in our Katagami collection. We've got quite a few famous names associated. There's Marianne Dawn from the 1930s.
But she was a very iconic designer.
She was, carriages, and ships, the cruises and things.
Yeah, so really
very
synonymous
deco-y.
with that Art Deco style. And you've got some of her designs, and then also people like
Voicey, Morris and Company.
Now that I've been doing this for about 10 years, what I've increasingly realised is nothing is new. Designers are always using historical references or traditional methods, and I think as we become more digitised and we have the capabilities of doing ever more kind of interesting things on a manufacturing front, people are appreciating kind of the handmade, the handcrafted and the traditional a lot more.